Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm glad you're here today. We're going to explore a really important topic: love versus attachment trauma. The title might sound straightforward, but there's a lot to unpack about how love is meant to nurture us, creating safety, encouraging growth, and fostering companionship. However, for many people, what they perceive as love can actually be something quite different, what we call attachment trauma. Today, we'll look at the differences, how these experiences shape us, and what we can do to heal. So let's get started. Understanding attachment trauma is really about recognizing how early experiences with caregivers shape our emotional wiring. When a child's needs for love and safety aren't consistently met, whether through neglect or abuse, they often internalize a belief that love is unpredictable, conditional, or something they have to earn. This isn't just a childhood issue. These wounds can follow us into adulthood, influencing how we connect with others. Sometimes they lead us into patterns that look like romance, but are actually toxic or unfulfilling. The key here is to recognize these patterns, seeing them for what they are, because that's the first step toward genuine intimacy and healing. When we understand where these behaviors come from, we can begin to break free and build healthier relationships. Let's take a closer look at the 7 signs that can help us distinguish trauma from true love. First, feeling incomplete is a common sign. When your self-worth becomes tied to another person, it can indicate an unhealthy attachment rather than genuine love. Next, the fear of abandonment is powerful. Every disagreement or conflict might feel like the end of the world, which isn't normal in healthy relationships. Struggling with boundaries is also key. Saying yes when you really want to say no can be a sign that you're trying to hold on or avoid conflict, but it often leads to resentment. Anxiety for passion, the roller coaster of highs and lows, can make you feel alive, but it's not sustainable and often masks deeper issues. Another important point is feeling responsible for the other person's emotions. Constantly managing their moods to feel safe can be exhausting and unhealthy. Obsessive thinking, like constant monitoring and vigilance, often signals a need for control that stems from trauma, not love. And finally, a need for reassurance, doubting your lovability without proof, can trap you in a cycle of insecurity and dependence. Understanding these signs helps us recognize when we might be caught in trauma rather than experiencing genuine love, which is essential for building healthier, more fulfilling relationships. When we talk about sign 1, you feel incomplete without them, what we're really getting at is the idea that in healthy love, your partner should enhance your life, but they shouldn't be the only source of your happiness or sense of worth. If you find yourself feeling empty, unworthy, or lost when your partner isn't around, that's a red flag indicating an attachment wound. This kind of attachment trauma happens when your sense of self-worth becomes tied too tightly to another person. It often stems from not having fully developed a stable sense of identity while growing up. Instead of seeing love as a partnership between 2 strong, independent individuals, it can turn into a dependency, where your partner essentially defines your existence. Now, it's important to understand the difference between dependency and individuality. Dependency means your partner defines your existence. That's what we want to avoid. True love, on the other hand, allows for individuality. It means you continue to grow, to evolve, with or without your partner. So, in a healthy relationship, you don't disappear or lose yourself when your partner isn't there. You maintain your sense of self, and your growth continues independently. That's the key to a balanced, loving connection, where love supports your growth, not replaces or diminishes it. Let's talk about sign 2. You have an intense fear of abandonment. You might notice that every disagreement in your relationship feels like the end of the world. Or perhaps, even when things are good, the thought of being apart from your partner feels almost unbearable. If you're haunted by this fear, that your partner might leave you, it's often rooted in childhood wounds. Maybe love was inconsistent or suddenly withdrawn without warning when you were young. What's important to realize is that this isn't actually love. What you're experiencing is fear. Healthy love, on the other hand, creates a sense of security. It means that conflict doesn't automatically mean rejection, and being apart doesn't mean disconnection. But for those with attachment trauma, the nervous system gets tricked, making you believe that love will always vanish. That's the key point here. This fear isn't about the present, it's about past wounds showing up in your current relationships. Understanding this helps us see how attachment trauma influences our reactions and why it's so important to address these fears. Let's talk about sign 3. You struggle to set boundaries. Do you find yourself saying yes when deep down you want to say no? Or perhaps you sacrifice your own needs just to keep your partner happy. This is a common sign of attachment trauma. Many children who had to earn love by being good, quiet, or taking care of others often grow into adults who see boundaries as threats. They might fear that asserting themselves will push people away, which makes setting boundaries really challenging. Now, it's important to understand that boundaries are not about rejection. They are about mutual respect. Boundaries actually protect our individuality and help us stay true to ourselves. In genuine love, boundaries are acts of respect, not threats. Trauma-based love might tell you that self-abandonment is necessary, but real love shows us that respecting ourselves and others is healthier and more sustainable. So, if you find it hard to set boundaries, remember, it's a sign of attachment trauma, but it's also something you can work on to build healthier relationships. Now, let's talk about sign 4. You mistake anxiety for passion. Many people confuse those little butterflies of nervousness with real love. But here, the key. Healthy relationships naturally grow into a state of calm and steady affection over time. In contrast, trauma bonds tend to feel like a roller coaster, with constant highs and lows that keep you on edge. If you find yourself overanalyzing every text, replaying conversations obsessively, or living in a constant state of unease, it's a sign that what you're feeling might actually be anxiety dressed up as romance. The difference is really important. Anxiety brings about constant tension, overthinking, and a sense of unease that never fully goes away. True love, on the other hand, feels safe. It provides peace and steady affection. You don't have to second-guess or worry all the time. Recognizing this difference is crucial because it helps us understand what's actually healthy and what might be damaging. So, if you're experiencing that roller coaster of emotions, it's a good sign to pause and reflect. What you're feeling might be more about anxiety than genuine love. Let's talk about sign 5. You feel responsible for their emotions. Have you ever been in an environment where you felt you had to manage others' moods just to stay safe? If so, you might now feel it's your job to keep your partner constantly happy. When they're upset, you tend to blame yourself, thinking you could have done something differently. If they're distant or withdrawn, you might start to panic, feeling like you need to fix it. This pattern often reflects attachment trauma, where you learned that controlling others' emotions was the only way to secure love and safety. It creates an emotional burden, where managing their happiness feels like your responsibility. But healthy relationships are different. They're about shared support, not emotional control. In a good partnership, you respect each other's independence. Each person has their own emotional world. You support one another, but you're not responsible for how the other person feels inside. Understanding this distinction is key to building healthier, more balanced connections. Now, let's talk about sign 6. You think about them obsessively. It's completely normal to think about someone you love throughout the day. But there's a big difference between healthy thoughts and intrusive, obsessive ones. When you find yourself constantly monitoring where they are, who they're with, or whether they're thinking of you, that's a sign of trauma. This kind of obsession often stems from early experiences where emotional consistency was lacking. When that happens, you learn to stay hypervigilant just to maintain connection. As adults, that vigilance can turn into obsession, which gives a false sense of control, a feeling that if you just watch enough, you can prevent losing them. But true love isn't about surveillance or control. It's built on trust, respect, and a sense of security. Hypervigilance and obsession are just signs that our early experiences have shaped how we relate to love now. Remember, healthy relationships are based on trust, not constant monitoring. When we see signs like needing constant reassurance, it's important to understand what's really going on. Do you find yourself asking, "Do you really love me?" repeatedly? Or feeling anxious if they don't reply immediately, interpreting silence as rejection? If so, that's not love. It's actually a sign of unresolved fear. Attachment trauma can make us believe we're not lovable without continuous proof. But genuine love doesn't require endless reassurance. Instead, it naturally builds trust over time. Healing beyond trauma is possible. Remember, attachment trauma isn't your fault. It's a result of unmet childhood needs. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward healing. When you become aware, you can start to separate fear from love, anxiety from passion, and trauma from authentic intimacy. Healthy love in its purest form feels like coming home. It allows you to be your true self without masks. It offers freedom from the chains of past wounds that once held you back. You deserve a love that is steady, safe, and free from those old wounds. That's the kind of love that nurtures your growth and brings genuine connection.